This Choircast podcast is brought to you by the book Drugs and Jesus by Josh Lawson. It's no secret that churches are stumbling in the dark when they look for ways to effectively serve people who use drugs. As the death toll of accidental drug overdose continues to rise across our country at an alarming rate, Christians are struggling to connect their faith with this urgent and holy work. Faith-based activists are attempting to bridge the gap, but so far, their message has been confined to socially progressive circles. Drugs and Jesus takes readers on a journey of theological and practical transformation that will help them learn how to better serve the most vulnerable members of their community, all without having to become experts in the field of addiction or theology.
Western Christianity has spent the last 2,000 years telling everyone they're separated from God.
This is Not Church with John and Nat Turney and Bethany Shea.
Well, hi, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. You are listening to This Is Not Church, and my name is Bethany. Nat is somewhere far away. We can't seem to reach him. He's on site for one of his jobs, so he won't be with us today. But John is here with me. You want to say hi, John?
Hi, John.
Oh, I love that you keep it up. Well done. Well done. Staying with consistency. People can...
That's one thing I will definitely do.
That's awesome. Well, we are here with an incredible guest we've had on the show before, and so she might be familiar to some of you. This person is named Leslie Nease. She is an incredible human. I got to meet her last month at a conference that I was at. But just to give you a heads up about her, she formerly is recognized as Sister Christian from Survivor China. She has a multifaceted background as a former Christian radio show host, a speaker and writer specializing in women's ministry. Oof, women's ministry is a whole thing. I can't do it. It's like too much pastel. I just can't. Today, she extends her expertise to others through navigating similar paths through her podcast called Honoring the Journey. And she also has a coaching enterprise, Leslie Nease Coaching. So if you are looking for a coach, this is your person. And she comes alongside individuals navigating through life and faith transitions. She lives in the mountains of Utah with her husband, Rod, and their two dogs, Winston and Henry, and they have 4 adult children together. Welcome, Leslie. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm so good. It's so good to be back. I love the show. I love all of you.
Yay.
And I did finally get to meet Bethany in person at Theology Beer Camp. So that was super fun. Actually, I will tell you the honest truth. It was one of the highlights for me was meeting you.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
No, I'm serious.
I feel so honored.
Well, you're such a lovely human. And I knew from the second that we chatted the first time, I was like, okay, we're going to connect. I knew it.
Yes.
And yeah, so it was good to see your face.
Thank you. It's good to see your face too. I felt exactly the same. It felt so like kindred immediately. And I'm just so grateful for that. You just came out with a book, which is called the same as your podcast, Honoring the Journey. And usually when we start our podcast, we ask the question like, well, what has your faith journey been like? But you were just on recently and you shared that so people can go back and listen to that faith journey. I'm sure it'll come up again, but I would love to know more about how you came about writing this book after growing up in such an evangelical setting, after being like this Christian darling that people could look up to. How did you get to a place where deconstruction became part of your life?
Oh, goodness. Well, for one thing, I would just want to tell you, I'm dog sitting for my son who's in Europe, and I have 2 dogs. So they're all deciding that now is the time to bark. So I apologize if you hear that in the background. Anyway, so the deconstruction thing sort of happened. It was kind of a slow burn for me. Little by little, I think just asking questions and just not feeling really comfortable with some of the answers that I was given. And then just kind of looking outside of the normal areas, I guess, to find those answers, looking at church history, looking at, just reading books from Rob Bell.
Oh my goodness.
Oh no.
Yeah, that heretic. And Rachel Held Evans, the people who were kind of progressive before progressive was really, it's kind of bigger now, you know what I mean? Which I love. But yeah, it was when I was told not to read people like that. I was told not to, not to ask too many tough questions. You'll know it all when you get to heaven. Just let God do his thing. And And so I think being on Survivor, I was a contestant back in 2007, started my journey of asking questions because it was the first time I had ever really popped my bubble. I was in this Christian community. I was Sister Christian in the Christian radio field. Like when I went on Survivor, like every Christian radio station in America, probably the world, was talking about me being on Survivor. And, just to give you an idea, I mean, the Christian population is a big market. When I was on the show, it was, it was insane. It was like 15 million people were watching. And then when I was voted out, it went down to 11 million. And
Wow.
and I'm not, it wasn't because I'm great. It's because they were so loyal. And then as soon as they voted me out, they were like, forget it. We want nothing to do with this stupid show, And I even had Christians say to me, I'm so glad I didn't have to keep watching it. And I'm like, you really missed out. It was a great season. You didn't have to stop watching, but everybody, it was just, I was very much in that world and teaching Bible studies, writing books, writing Bible studies, leading women's groups, speaking all over the US and the world. I mean, I was after Survivor was traveling, to Korea and Canada and other countries to share the message of Jesus Christ. So I was very, very in. So asking these questions was really scary for me initially, really scary. And one of the things I wanted to do with my book, when I wrote the book, I did it because I know there's a lot of people wondering, what the heck is she doing? Why is she doing this? What does this mean? What does she believe now? But they dare not ask me. They dare not, because I am now in the heretic category, as Rob Bell and Rachel Held Evans were. And so I was like, this will be a safe place for people to kind of, especially evangelicals who are still in it, who are like, why did she do this? I want them to understand this is why I did it. I'm not trying to burn a bridge, but I'm trying to build one. I'm trying to help people understand this is why I did what I did. But the book is also for people who are going through it, because it teaches them, like, this is how I did it. And I never tell people what to believe as a life coach ever. Never. And I work with a lot of people who go through deconstruction, but I want to teach them, to discover their autonomy, because you lose it in religion a lot of times. And in toxic religion, let's just say. And then also, you also lose your ability to trust yourself. And so learning to listen to your inner self and your voice and trusting your heart. All of these things are so important. And so I walk people through the process that I went through, the questions I asked, the sources that I used. And then I talk about where I'm at today. So that's kind of how it started. And then it kind of amped up. If you listen to the podcast I was on before with you guys, I hate to repeat, but I moved from the Bible Belt to Utah. And so now I'm like this minority in a very, very huge, financially wealthy religion called Latter-day Saints. So, all of a sudden I found myself being prayed for, instead of doing the praying for. I was the one that was the heathen, and they were trying to, get me to believe what they believed. But they were believing a lot of the same things. They were doing a lot of the same things. And to me, it was just eerily similar. And so then I started asking questions about that, because I was told, when I moved here, all my Christian friends were like, oh, it's a cult. You're going to go save them. They're going to be, now they'll know the truth about who Jesus really is, because they don't know anything. But the problem is they think they know it, the truth, the true truth, and that we didn't know anything, and then I realized, wait, every religion thinks that their way is the only way and their truth is the only truth. And so, that's a lot to wrestle with. And I had the space to do it because I was out of my bubble. I feel like it's very, very difficult. And I really commend people who go through this deconstruction process when you're surrounded by people who want to keep you in the bubble and don't want you to escape or see what's out there, because they're scared. So that was it was a really big deal for me to come out here and just find my legs, and learn to walk again. And discover who I really am. And I don't know, it's just been a really, really cool and difficult process.
Well, you talk about questions, right? I mean, I think we all have that in common, that there were questions that we started asking about our faith. A simple question would be, what were some of the first questions that came to you that started making you question your faith?
Well, and here's what's interesting. I love that you put it that way, because I think a lot of people do think that I've lost my faith, that I have questioned my faith. I've never questioned my faith. I questioned my theology
Gotcha.
and my religion. And so my deconstruction wasn't deconstructing my faith. My faith was solid. It just didn't line up. Like my heart and my head weren't connecting. So it was very difficult for me to, I don't know, like understand why we were so judgmental towards homosexuals, the LGBTQ community. You know, one of my friends on Survivor was gay, and he was so sweet, and I loved him so much. And we had so many great, deep conversations, not only on the show, but, you know, well after. And, you know, it didn't make sense to me that would exclude him from having a relationship with God. But I remember somebody telling me, and I've taught this before, and I apologize if I taught this to you and you're listening to this, I don't believe it anymore. But that if you choose to be a homosexual over having a relationship with God, then that is your God. And so I really struggled with that. That was like the first big question. And then hearing, you know, people say things like, well, it's an abomination. And so then I studied what abominations are. And, you know, they're really, I mean, you can't eat shellfish, guys. It's an abomination. You can't mix your fabrics, guys. It's an abomination, you know, and I'm like, okay, so why are we taking this particular one and breaking it down into the biggest of all that would exclude them from a relationship with God? And it just wasn't lining up. And so I was like, how can I understand God's love for me in a way that doesn't include him not wanting me unless? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I started to kind of like, I don't know, do research into, you know, different ways of viewing God. I would say universalism has been incredibly insightful for me. And that used to scare the crap out of me, which is funny because it's so not scary. The thing that's scary is thinking that God isn't going to, you know, love everyone and that he's going to exclude people. And I don't know. I just chose to lean into love, and I make my choices that way. And I make so much room and so much space for people to make other choices and believe other things. It doesn't affect me. And, you know, it used to affect me because if they didn't get saved, they were going to go to hell and their blood was going to be on my hands. Maybe I didn't tell the gospel good enough. Maybe I didn't convince them enough. Maybe my life didn't line up with who Jesus really is. And so they decided they didn't want him. I mean, there was so much pressure to recruit that it was impossible to have a real connection with another human being unless they believed the way I did.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember going to this thing called DCLA when I was in high school. And it was an evangelism conference where you learned all about how to evangelize people, how to tell people the Romans road within 2 minutes while you're at a bus stop. So you're always like talking to strangers. And I remember being so scared about that I thought I must be a horrible Christian because my fear is keeping somebody in hell. And it's just so much pressure, especially on a teenager to have that.
So much pressure.
Yeah. And that whole idea that maybe God is bigger than what I can make God out to it's freedom. It's just totally freedom. I'm curious. So you have all these questions that have like pummeled you and you've danced along with and figured out over the years. What is a question that you have now? Are you still wrestling in some spaces?
Of course I am, because I'm an overthinker and I was taught to do that. I was taught very well in my indoctrination to overthink everything, except, to a certain point, but I feel like, what am I struggling with right now? Wow. What a great question, Bethany. I think it's not really a question as much as it is, maybe it is a question. Am I okay? Like where I'm at? Am I okay? Because the last thing I would want to do is lead somebody down a road. That's why I'm always like, don't follow me. Don't do what I'm doing. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing because I think people who are starting this journey need a template, and it can look very vastly different. But it's helpful to have somebody walk alongside of you and ask you the right questions, not tell you because you're used to that, but actually make you find those answers in yourself. So I'm so like, if I'm wrong, that'll really suck. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but guys, I'm more sure of where I'm at now than I ever was when I was deep in evangelicalism, because the heart and the mind didn't line up. Like my mind would say, but the Bible says this, and this is how we interpret it. And so this can't be right. And you have to do this and blah, blah, blah. But then my heart would be like, yeah, but that doesn't really feel like love. Help. It doesn't feel like what I believe. If God is love, this doesn't make sense. And so, and then people would say, well, you know what? It's just you, it's not up to you. You can't question God. You're just a human. You're just his little creation, you're the pot and he's the potter and you're just the clay and he's doing his thing and you just don't get any say. You can't ask him why he's doing what he's, and I'm like, but then I think about my own relationship as a mother with my children. And let me tell you, I want to hear from them. I want to know what they're concerned about. I want to feel their pain and be in it with them. I want to understand how they see the world. And if it's different than I do, I'm not going to send them to hell. I'm not going to go, well, you don't believe the right way. Well, by golly, off to freaking eternal damnation for you. It didn't make sense. And I say this all the time. It made all the sense in the world until I thought about it. And when I learned to think about things, I really stopped being so dogmatic. And now I can honestly tell you, I don't know anything. I don't know anything. And here's the funny thing, that makes me feel so much freer than when I knew it all. Because now, it's like, it makes more sense that we have all these different religions, and that we have all these different people trying to connect with the divine in the way that they know how, in the way that they were raised, in the communities that they were raised in. And it all makes sense when you really stop and think about it. But it didn't make sense from this is the only way. And I hear people say all the time, but Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and life. No one gets to the Father except through me. And you know what? I actually agree, because I think what he's trying to say is, when you live your life the way I'm living my life, knowing that I'm fully connected to God, when you live your life in love and kindness and acceptance, and you stand up for the oppressed and the people that are being marginalized, when you do all of that, you're going to be in the kingdom of God, like right now, not when you die, but like right now, you can walk in this. And he even said, you'll do greater things than me. Like, you don't understand. You're so connected to God. You are. You don't need a religion to tell you that. You don't need a religion to give you a pass, And so then I just started going, okay. And it's not that religion is bad. I think there's very, very good religions, pure and undefiled religions, but I do think sometimes they just get a little too caught up in money making, rule following, law, all the things that the Pharisees loved. And we know what he had to say to the Pharisees, a lot of really harsh things that I don't want him to say to me, it's kind of where I'm at.
Well, I'm curious how that, like, you've gone through a lot in your own faith shifts. How, as much as you're able to share, how has that affected your family and your marriage? And if you weren't able to share that, what would you express to other people if they're going through something and maybe their spouse isn't on board yet, or maybe their kids are not in that place? Like, what would that be like for them and for you?
Well, I will tell you, my husband probably went through this well before I did. And this is going to be some really good advice. If your spouse isn't seeing it the way you are, and she or he is still deep in the church and 100% and worried sick about you, where you're at, don't push it. Like my husband never, ever pushed it. He went to church with me. He did the thing with me. Like he was 100% like whatever you need, Leslie, because he knew that this was my thing. Like this was more my thing than it was his. He always just kind of went along because he wanted me to be happy. And then when I started deconstructing and I started going, when you think about it, and I'd say something, he'd be like, yeah, I thought about that a while ago. And I'm like, why didn't you say anything? He's like, Leslie, would you have listened? He's like, no, you had to find this for yourself. And I knew you would. You're a smart woman. You're not going to let this happen forever, and I had been through a lot in ministry and in church, and emotionally I was a freaking wreck. And I talk about a lot of that in my book as well. But he just believed that eventually I would see it. And I did. And I'm not saying that happens with everybody, but I am saying it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to walk it out when it's not being forced on you. You can't take somebody someplace they're not ready to go. And if you try, that's where I think people really start to struggle. And, there's even a scripture, I think it's in 1 Peter 3, where it talks about, wives, when your husband's over by the reverence of your lives, and in other words, you don't have to tell them and, nag at them about, you need to believe this and you need to just live your life and be good and be kind and let that be the light. And so for me, that was my husband. He really did show me that, he wasn't as into it as me. That's fine. Of course I worried. I thought he was going to hell. I thought I, was carrying the weight of the whole family on my shoulders. But he lived his life so much more like Jesus than most of the people I knew in the church. And he was kind and he was giving and he was loving and he was a good leader, but they had no space for him. They had no place for him in the church because he was a businessman. They're like, well, if you really want to be involved, just give money. And, he felt emasculated like all the time there. He's like, there's just no way. There's no place for me. There's a place for you, Leslie, because when Leslie gets into something, Leslie jumps in 100%. You know what I mean? But then when Leslie jumps out, she jumps out 100%. So it's like, but when I was in it, it defined me. It was my life. And how dare he come to me and tell me that I had to believe something different? He couldn't have done that. It wouldn't have worked. Does that make sense?
Yeah, he honored your journey.
He totally honored my journey. And that is the beauty of it. And now I still do the same. I just had a professor at a Christian university tell me, he said, I have some students, we're in a religious sociology class, and they want to ask you some questions about your deconstruction. Would you be willing to answer? And I'm like, heck yes, I would love to. That'd be awesome. So I really put some thought into these answers. But one of the questions was, are you trying to recruit people to your new belief system? And I was like, not at all. That is not why I'm being vocal. I'm being vocal so that people know they're not the only one. So that people know there's a safe place to unpack all these questions. There are people who, you can talk to about this. But that's the beauty of where I'm at now. I'm not recruiting anybody. Like before, it was life and death. If you don't come on my side, I won't see you in heaven. You're going to go burn. Your flesh will burn from your bones for all of eternity. And somehow that made sense to me as a repercussion of their belief system. But like I said, it makes sense until you think about it. When I thought about it, I'm like, that does not make sense. That does not sound like something God would do. And then when you do the research, about hell, and you do the research about where it came from and how, Dante's Inferno really had a lot to do with how we look at hell right now, not necessarily what the Bible was saying. And, I started to unpack hell. And so little by little, one thing at a time, I just deconstructed these beliefs until I felt peace. And that peace is what I want people to feel. And I want people to know that you will feel it again on this side of deconstruction. Because when you leave, you're told you're never going to feel peace again. You're never going to be happy. You're never going to be fulfilled. I just had somebody write to me yesterday and say, they were talking about somebody else who had deconstructed from a different religion. And she was like, he's never going to find peace. He's never going to be happy. And I'm like, yeah, I think he is. It's more like, it's breaking free of people trying to tell you who you are and what you should do and what you should believe, and allowing yourself to trust yourself and to trust the Spirit in you. If the Spirit leads us into truth, then we just need to be still and listen to that and trust that he will, or she.
Yeah. I mean, you're speaking so much of the same stuff that I was going through when I was going through my deconstruction. And, I've talked about this on the podcast many times. I went through deconstruction twice. I went through deconstruction when I was about 18. And then I went through deconstruction again in my 40s, because I decided to come back to the faith and do all the things and like you said, when I was in it, I was 110% in. If I was going to do it, it's going to be 100%. For me, and this is the question I have for you, and I'll start with what my version of it. The hardest thing actually for me to get rid of was the concept of hell. And I don't know why, because now looking back at it, and now that I've deconstructed that completely, I don't know why I held on to it for so long. But was there something that you had to hold on to that you're like, there's no way I'm getting rid of this one?
Oh, every single one of them. Every single one of them. I was like, no, I can't not believe that. I tell you, the hardest one for me was the Bible. I was convinced 100% that the Bible was inerrant. It was infallible. It was the word of God. And if anything went against what the Bible said, it couldn't be true. And when I did the research on that, Pete Enns was a huge help for me in that. He has some amazing resources that he has written, but it was The Bible Tells Me So. That was the one that got me. I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. Like every single people group back then had a God, and they all wrote books about their God, because that's how you tell people this is who our God is. And of course, he said, and I'll never forget this. He said, it's kind of like when people go on the playground and they're like, my dad is stronger than your dad. And they like argue about it. So all the stories that were written from man's perspective of who God is, saying that God was, committing genocide and like just destroying people and just angry all the time. Like those were perspectives of people who wanted to intimidate other people, other tribes, other groups, because that was their way. This was their warfare back then. And so for some reason, we have taken this particular tribe's Bible and made it the one that America believes. And so, now we see, people, they won't even listen to these Palestinian people who are suffering and dying by the droves in God, and it's just so sad. And they won't even listen because Israel is God's chosen people. And if we go against Israel, God will destroy us. And so, do you even if you step out of your bubble and just listen to how ridiculous that sounds, like it makes sense until you think about it.
Yeah.
And then it won't.
And for me, one of the linchpins in that was Israel is bombing Palestinian Christians.
Yeah.
By the thousands.
Oh, yes.
Killing Palestinian Christians. And we are standing by saying we are 100% behind Israel. And I say that and I cringe at myself because I'm picking one group, right?
Yep.
And
same.
that I shouldn't, but I want to use that as their hypocrisy.
They should have a voice too. That's
right.
the thing.
Right.
That it's not just the Israelites, doing this. It's the world behind them because of the intimidation that we still feel to this day about a God that they wrote about 2,000 years ago, over 2,000 years ago. And it's to me, I just can't believe how muddied the water has gotten. Well, I guess it's always been muddy, but it just, when politics and religion decided that they were going to be bedfellows, it just really, I think that's what really took me out of the church. I was like, I can't do it. And it's not because I'm super political. I'm really not. I would say that I'm, I don't really have a partisan. I'm not like, I'm not an activist. You don't even see me talk about politics much on my social media. And honestly, it's because I don't know much about it. The only thing I know is that people deserve to be loved, heard, listened to, treated with respect, and they deserve to be heard. I just remember when I was in the church, we did not want to hear from people who believed different. We did not want to listen to people who didn't believe the way we did. And that was so difficult for me because I'm a listener. I love people. And so for the first 6 years of my deconstruction, that's all I did. I didn't talk to anybody, even my husband. I just listened. I listened to perspectives and I broadened my perspective and my narrative. And I realized, wow, I don't think dogma's for me. I just don't think it is.
Was it mostly podcasts that you were listening to, or were you actually seeking out other humans to ask about their experiences?
You know what? I was an invisible for a really long time. And I call invisibles, they're the people who are online looking for voices that are saying what their heart is saying. And they just needed to hear it. Oh my gosh, there's another human being that feels this way. And they're expressing it with words. How are they doing that? I was in awe that people could say these things out loud. And now look at me. I'm doing it. Not only am I saying it, I'm writing it. I'm talking about it. Because it is not, it always seems so much scarier until you're on the other side of it. And then the freedom that came for me personally, I'm not saying this is everyone, but for me personally, when I started just speaking where I was, and I'll call it my truth, when I started speaking where I was and being honest about where I was, it felt so freeing for me to just be able to be 100% authentic and not feel like I was going to offend people, and I'm sure I did offend people, but they just, and a lot of people have had a lot of things to say to me. I've had to block some people. And the way I do it, I don't go, I'm going to block you. I'm so mad. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to block myself from your page so that you don't have to see what I'm saying, because this is clearly getting you upset. And that's not my intention. So then I block them. But the way I put it was, I'm going to block myself.
That's good. I love that perspective. And just the fact that you have opened yourself up to be that voice in a wilderness in some ways, calling out like, you're not alone. You're not alone. There are so many people who need voices like yours to know that they have a safe place to land and that you're a trustworthy source in their lives. And that is something really beautiful. I'm sure, the election just happened, but when we're recording this, the election happened almost a week ago. And so there is a level of people feeling really alone and scared and wondering what they can believe anymore, or if they believe anymore, wondering how they could ever go back to a church setting. Have people reached out to you in that space and sought your wisdom?
Yeah, they have. And everybody who does it is an invisible. They don't want other people to know. And I will hold that. I will hold that and I will be careful with that. And I will treat that with tenderness because I understand even reaching out to one person when you're an invisible is literally my whole body would shake. The first person I reached out to was Gary Allen Taylor from Holy Heretics podcast. I don't know why he was the one, but I just reached out to him. I was like, I feel like I'm supposed to share, but I'm not really through it yet. I don't know what to do. And he sat there and talked to me on the phone for over an hour. And he didn't even know me. Like he didn't know me at all. And he took that time and I thought, this is what I want to do when I'm on the other side of this. I want to help other people. And, it just was really, it's lonely, it's scary, it's difficult. And so it's a very tender time. And I don't want anybody to ever feel like anything that they would ever say to me or, would be on the podcast or whatever. It's like, it's all very tender. And I'm very soft-hearted about it, but I'm also very soft-hearted. And this is new. I say this is new because I went through anger and it was a really long phase for me, of being mad, but I don't express myself well, online about it. It was more like, people I'm close to, I'd be like, or in the car with, road rage or what, I don't know. Like I was just like all of a sudden this angry person. And it was like, I knew it felt naughty because I'm not, Christian woman. You're not supposed to be angry.
A gentle and quiet spirit.
Yes, it's such a gift, just be lovely,
Lasting charm.
Leslie. And I was like, "Rrr." I mean, I called people things. My kids were like, I cannot believe you just said that word. And I'm like, I can't either, to be honest. But because I am in a place now, though, because I allowed myself to feel angry, and it felt really good to get it out. You know what I mean? Like in ways that weren't destructive. And I was careful when I was going through the deep, deep anger parts. I was careful not to go online. I was careful not to throw it out there because, a lot of times we say things when we're angry that are blanket statements. And there are some really good people that are still in evangelicalism. There are some really good pastors that I sat underneath that, are kind and lovely. They believe a little different than I do now, but that's okay. Like, I don't, I don't wish anybody ill will, but now I can honestly say I have tremendous compassion for people who are still in the same thought process that I used to be in, that same faith tradition of, if I don't say the prayer, I will go to hell and be separated from God. And, or even, and this was so freeing for me to understand, even knowing that I was created to be connected to God from the start. There was never a disconnection. Like, I'd never, ever imagined that, because I was told that I was born this disgusting sinner and God couldn't even stand to look at me. And, but now that you have Jesus in your heart, he looks at you and he sees Jesus. Isn't that wonderful? And I'm like, well, then why am I here? Like, why did God create me if I'm a piece of trash that needs Jesus over me? Like, it just didn't, again, the heart and the head did not connect. And but realizing that connection was always there. And like, I see now that a lot of times I believe, I'm not saying this is true, I believe that religion often tells us that we need something that we don't need. We need you. Do you need to be in this religion in order to have a relationship with God? You need to do what we say and go through these check marks, and you need to do. And Jesus's message was, you need to be. We're human beings, not human doings. But like, religion wore me the freak out, guys. I was exhausted because it never felt like enough, because hell was at stake. And I'm such an empath, and I've always been incredibly like all about connection and community, and like knowing that anybody was going to go to hell. It kept me up at night. It kept me, in a constant state of anxiety. And now I don't have that anymore. And I don't know how that's bad. If somebody wants to say, well, it's wrong, you're wrong. I'm like, if I'm wrong, then let me be wrong. If I get before God and he says, or she, says to me, you just loved a little too hard. So I'm going to send you to hell. I'll be like, okay, I get it. If that's who you are, I probably don't want to be around you anyway. Do you know what I mean? So, but that's not going to happen, guys. Because I've gotten to know God on my terms and how my heart feels safe with God. And I remember reading The Shack back when I was deep in evangelicalism, right when I came back from China. And have you guys read that book? Okay. Well, one of the things that he does in there is he has God come to the guy who is, the main character, Buck. God comes to this guy as like this round African-American older woman. But the reason that Paul Young wrote that into the story wasn't because he was trying to say God is this African-American woman, but because that is who Buck needed God to be in order to feel safe, because he had been so injured by his father. He only felt safe with this African-American woman that was in his neighborhood, and that gave him cookies and treated him well and listened to him and made him feel appreciated and valued and loved. And that is why God in that book came to the main character as that. And I think about that all the time. I'm like, we try to make God, we're creating God. or in the image that we want God to be. And for some reason, and I think the election is proof of this, a lot of evangelicals like an authoritarian, angry bully of a leader. It makes them feel safe. So that's how they see God. And it makes sense to me now.
I naively went to my pastor after reading The Shack, because I had just come back to church, and I read this book, The Shack, and I was just blown away by this version of God and this story of the love of God. And I went to my pastor and I was like, "Have you read this book yet? Have you read this book?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to read that book." And I'm like, that was one of those moments of like, okay, we're not on the same page. And that's too bad.
Yeah. Well, when I came back from China, being on Survivor, I was in a really dark place spiritually. And my speaking, I had like a, what do they call it when you have, like helps get you assignments or whatever. He was my speaking person. Like he would get me gigs or whatever. But he also was a literary agent. That's what he was. He was also a literary agent. And so he was Paul Young's literary agent for The Shack. And he said, "Leslie, it sounds like you're in this really dark place. I think this book, it hasn't even really come out yet. I think you're really going to love it." So I read it in like 2 days and cried my eyes out. And it was so beautiful. So I told everybody about it. And I was on Christian radio at the time. I had Paul Young on my show. I interviewed him. It was so beautiful until the listeners started calling in. And these are the listeners that were donating. And they were like, no, ma'am. You're a heretic. He's a heretic. This is a bad message. God is not just love. He's also just. Like, it was almost like they were offended that we would look at God in a loving way. Like, how can you? How dare you? You've seen what God's capable of in the Old Testament. And I'm like, yeah, but Jesus said, you've heard it said this, but I say this. Jesus said, "Hey, look at me, guys. This is how you live your life. This is who God is. If you want to know what God is, look at me." And so that was the first time I was called a heretic, was when I was in Christian radio. And I was told I would never be allowed to talk about a book on the air again. I was done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so painful and so predictable, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in retrospect, I'm like, of course, Leslie, what were you thinking? But
the sad part is most of the people that I've been in conversation with who tell me that book, and trust me, it's not even the most heretical book I've read now. I mean, The Shack is
way down there on the list now.
Yes, it's tame in comparison to some stuff that
RJ the astronaut.
No. But almost without fail, I'm not going to say every single one, but the majority of the people who would come at me about that book never even picked it up.
Yeah.
Never even read it. And I was like, and so I got to the point where I was like, I'm not even going to have this conversation with you. I mean, if you're not even willing to read it, well, of course, they're not going to read it, because then that takes them down that slippery slope. Right.
Right.
And they've been told by their pastor to listen to the pastor. And if the pastor says, "Don't read the book," don't read the book. Mm-hmm. So. Oh, yeah. That's a sad state of affairs. And again, into politics, we now have a group of people saying, "Don't question your leaders. Your leader has a much better understanding of what you need." And then we get things like "your body, my choice." And that is scary as hell.
It is. It's so scary. Yeah. And I'm trying really hard to look at the positive. I'm like, there's not a lot, but I'm trying to find it. I've always been that person. Even when I work with people in my coaching, I'm like, listen, I get it. There's a lot of trauma that you've come from. There's a lot of trauma that you've dealt with in your religion. I understand that, but let's try to think of what is something good that you can bring back, bring with you as you deconstruct, because there's good too. Like, don't forget that. There's always going to be some good. And so I'm trying to think, I honestly haven't really come up with much for the list for our country yet, but okay. So one thing I think is good is that we didn't have to deal with the bloodbath that he predicted, Right. So yay. Cause that the blue party seems to be very well behaved. about
Yeah.
all of this. I mean,
Yeah.
they're upset and they're expressing their lamenting and all of that, but they're not storming the Capitol,
No.
And it's not that all Trump supporters do that, but like, that's the kind of things that, like, that just tells me so much. It tells me really all I need to know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and on the progressive side, there is a standing and very loud resistance right now. And I think that's something that needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I applaud that. I applaud the people who are saying, okay, this is what happened, but we're not going to quietly go into the night as they control us from this point on. For me, it's difficult, and because I'm yelling, hey, we gotta treat everybody with love and respect and understanding, and then I'm like, but these people,
they're not. Yeah,
they're not.
And what do you do with that, John?
What's that?
What do you do with that? Like when they're not doing it, that's not fair.
Yeah, that is a hard place to be in where, and Jay Baker was one of the people that we talked to who really made me start questioning my ability to love my enemy.
Exactly. The compassion, remembering you were there once. I mean, I was there. I never really bought into the whole Trump thing. I don't understand how that can happen, but I did. I mean, in 2016, I did vote for him, but then I took my ballot because it made me want to throw up and I shredded it and I just didn't vote because I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And
I didn't vote for him either time. I did vote third party the first time because I was in a place where I couldn't vote for either.
Right.
And, I live in a state though that my vote isn't going to matter.
Yeah,
it's easy to vote third party when you live in a state that is going to vote a specific way.
Right. Exactly.
I have a lot of respect for people who, very loudly spoke out against Trump from a state where they knew they were going to lose, that their opinions were not going to be heard. I have the privilege of living in California where it was going to go blue. It just was. So, I mean, I voted and I voted for Kamala, proudly, but my issue is I can't be quiet about the hate. I just can't. And the harm that's going to be coming to my LGBTQ siblings.
It's terrible.
And so how do I come at that from a place of love?
Whew, that's such a good question. I actually, I don't know. The way that people make assumptions about how you're going to react when they come at you. I think being level-headed, speaking truth, but trying to do it in love. I don't know. What did Jesus do? He asked a lot of questions. I'm just like, it's really all I can think to do.
Yeah.
It's,
I agree with you. I think I'm going
to go read the Gospels again. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Like, what did he do? Because he was dealing with not only, politics, but religion. It was the same deal. And he was very anti-violence. And he even wanted to forgive the people when they were crucifying him. Like, whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I think asking questions it's one of the best things that we can do because, it helps people understand their own reasoning and their own logic, how they got to where they were. And sometimes when we ask the right kind of questions, a lot of times people can see that they had no idea how they got where they were. Oh, wow, it's actually Tucker Carlson who got me where I was. And it wasn't actually from me and it's not actually from Jesus. And, so having that state of curiosity, the hard thing for me though, when I'm asking questions, it's really hard for me to stay level-headed. Like
to not be snarky.
Yep, I get a little snarky. Sometimes there's some knives hid in my words and behind the things I'm asking, and so I have to really check myself in those spaces. Mm-hmm. Like, what is my objective here? Am I here to love and understand, or am I here to prove somebody wrong?
I think we have to disarm ourselves, not necessarily with weapons, from our weapons, but from our ideas of who people are based on who they voted for. Because I know a lot of people who voted for Trump who are like, I had somebody come up to me, guys, and they said, well, like, honestly, because they voted for Trump, why are you so upset? How does this affect you? And the truth is, I'm a white woman married to a white man. We're in a tax bracket that's probably going to benefit from Trump being. You know what I mean? So I understand what they're saying, but I don't think they understand that I'm not concerned about myself. I'm concerned about the marginalized and the oppressed and the people who are being hurt as a result of this decision. Like sometimes, guys, guess what? It's not about you. Sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes it's about other people that need somebody to fight for them. And so when I said that, there was a lot of quietness. There was a lot of silence. And it was like, oh crap, how do I follow that one up? And it's like, I didn't do it to be snarky. I just was like, honestly, it's not about this,
Yeah. I mean, I'm in a very similar place. I'm a, middle-aged, cisgender, white male, who's fairly well off. I also will probably benefit from whatever tax benefits that he puts into place. Mm-hmm. But I have a son who has a girlfriend who wasn't born in this country. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very close to me when they're talking about mass deportations. And the way they talk about it isn't only about, I mean, she's here legally and I'm afraid for her.
Yeah. With good reason. Because we don't know. I mean, it feels like the goalposts keep moving. And I don't know where they'll end up.
I have a transgender cousin who will probably not get the medical treatment that he needs anymore. I have a large amount of LGBTQI plus siblings who I fear for daily. And like you said, it's not about me. Mm-hmm. And I'm not voicing this because I'm afraid for me. I'm not afraid for me.
Right.
I'm afraid for the marginalized around me.
I'm afraid for the people I love. I'm afraid for the people I care about. Yep. And I'm afraid for our country if we can't see that that's a big deal. We're just so self-absorbed in this country. I mean, in the world really, but like all I know is this country. And I can tell you it's, as long as we keep looking at ourselves and making decisions that are best for only us, I just don't see us moving forward as a society in a good direction.
I was talking to my wife the day after the election, and I said, you know what, I'm going to just start. I will never do this because I couldn't. It would be horrendous. But I want to go one day and talk to everyone around me the way he talks. How quickly would I get pulled? Like I say, I did it at work. Mm-hmm. How quickly would it be before I got pulled into the office?
2 seconds.
And said that you can't speak like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you'd get in trouble at work because you're an adult, but I can tell you my daughter is a teenager and she said the boys at our school are already talking like him. They're already saying things like, well, you're ours now, your body, our choice. Things like that are just happening already in high schools. And so, and it's almost like you just have to laugh it off. That's where she's at. She feels like she has to laugh it off because you can't speak against it, because if you do, then you could become targeted. And so it's just, it's a really scary thing especially for girls and for people of color right now. And hopefully there's enough good people that continue forth in this good work of loving our neighbors and speaking truth to power when we can and are able to, which is what you do, Leslie. Like you're doing this even through the book that you wrote, through your podcast, through just who you are as a person, being a person that is safe for others to talk with and be real with. I mean, that is just, you are a gift. You are truly a gift to this whole community. It's amazing.
Thank you. You're going to make me cry. Cause like, I honestly, I think there's a fear when you leave religion that you're never going to be able to do what you love again. And I'm finding that is such a lie. It's a lie they wanted me to believe. I'm doing it now. I'm still loving people. I'm still helping people and sitting with people and listening and learning and growing. I'm doing it all. I'm just doing it all outside of the bubble.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's talked about so often, this idea that once you leave, where are you going to go? Like who will you be without a faith community, without a church building, without this religion trailing behind you? It's like There's a lot of fear in leaving something like that behind because you just don't know what will be on the other side. But sometimes you just have to. You just have to take that leap.
And the people that I've lost, one of them being my biological father, he doesn't talk to me anymore. But I'm like, I spent my whole life trying to be enough for him. And now I don't have to.
Wow.
Now I'm like, oh, I'm free of that too. Like, it's fine. Like, if he ever wants to call me, he knows where I'm at. But like, in the meantime, I don't have to keep, banging my head against a wall, trying to be in his life. He left when I was 6 months old. So I've never really had a relationship with him, but I've always wanted one. And now it's not that I don't want one, but I'm okay that he doesn't. Because if somebody only wants to be in my life for what I believe, then, and not for who I really am, then I probably would do better to not pursue a relationship like that.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm realizing that a lot of it's the dross. You know what I mean? It's like, it's coming off. It's all of the things that, I thought were important. All of the people who I thought loved me, it's all becoming very clear now. And that's okay. Because I do find now that I have deeper relationships that go way beyond belief, and so much richer and more beautiful. It's like different colors now, where before it was all the same color, I don't know.
Well, you make that comparison to the fall colors, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Would you want to look out onto the fall colors and just see red?
Yeah, no.
And I picked that color on purpose. I think maybe you did too.
Yeah, I did.
I don't know.
The fall colors. I was driving down the mountain the other day and saw all these colors. It was so beautiful. It took my breath away. And I was like, oh, that's what life feels like now. And I was so excited. And I was like, ew. It was almost like that, when you hear the record go, remember when, Leslie? Remember when every tree was the same color and nothing, no other tree, no other color was allowed. And if you were yellow, you needed to get off your mountain because we're red here,
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, oh my gosh, is that a new color of magenta that I've never seen? Bring it. Like, I want to see it. I want to embrace it. I want to know all about it. Where did you find that color? And now it's just like this beautiful freedom that felt so self-indulgent when I was in religion. I was like, they think they're free, but they're not. And I'm like, no, I am free.
And you're free to accept people of different faiths.
Yeah.
And without it, because when I was steeped in religion, the idea of having a Muslim friend or a Jewish friend or a Catholic friend, because Catholics weren't real Christians, right? Or an LDS friend.
Yeah.
And now I'm free to love these people as Jesus would tell us to.
Well, I had Reza Aslan on my podcast. He wrote the book, Jesus of Nazareth, or The Life and Times of Jesus of Nazareth. And he is a religious scholar. He's amazing. And he said something that was just so profound to me. He's like, your faith is very personal. Your faith is so personal. And your religion is your language that helps you express your faith. And every religion is like a well that we're digging to get to the water. And so we're all digging these wells, but we're all getting to the same water. But we think, oh, this is the only well that's getting to, you think you're in water, but that's not really water. And they're like, really? Because, it tastes like water to me, and it's like, so to me, I'm just like, wow, like that is such a great analogy to help you realize that, even if you just ask just one time, just give yourself permission to say, what if we're all trying to do the same thing?
Yeah.
To connect with God. And what if we're already there? What if we don't need a well to get it because it's coming from within? What if? I'm not saying, I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm just saying sometimes it's okay to think outside of the box and to allow yourself, because wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be grand? If I don't know, instead of scary, it just, to me, it's beautiful.
And Paul, in the shack, there's a line in the shack where it says, all roads and this is where he and I differed a little bit. And I think Paul Young and I actually are on the same page, but I think he was told to step back a little bit from his universalism in his book. But he writes a line that says something like, all roads don't lead to God, but I'm there with you on all the roads. And I changed that in my book, and I wrote, all roads do lead to God. It's just the length of that road might be longer than you expected.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's rocky, and sometimes it's not paved, and sometimes it's paved, and sometimes, it's a 4-lane highway. And, it's just, to me, I think honoring another person's journey is just letting them go on it and not insisting that they go on yours.
Yeah, absolutely.
The word religion comes from the Latin word lig, where we get ligament, and good religion brings things back together, whereas bad religion pulls it apart. Oof. And what I see today from this conversation is that this is good religion. This is the kind that brings us back together, and makes us one. It reminds us that we're already connected to the best parts of life. So thank you, Leslie, for this incredible time.
Absolutely.
You are such a light in this world. And it was just so much fun to talk to you today. And your book is out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Honoring the Journey. And so friends, you should definitely go and pick it up. You can buy it at all the bookstores and Amazon if you would like, or wherever you would like to get it, please. It's in time to get for Christmas if you want to get it for other people as well. So you could pick that up.
Yeah.
So thank you, Leslie.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me again. It was so fun to catch up.
Just again, thank you for taking the time to have this conversation with us. It was an amazing conversation. I love talking to you.
Same. My heart is so full.
Thank you for listening to This Is Not Church. Be sure to rate and review the podcast on your platform of choice. If you would like to partner with us, visit patreon.com/thisisnotchurch, where you will receive exclusive content such as early access to episodes, videos of upcoming episodes, and live Q&A sessions. Be sure to check out our Facebook group or follow us on Twitter and Instagram. All the links are in the show notes. We'll be back soon with another episode.